Good morning. This is a honor to present that our representation related to the different changes due to the technology and how does it influence in our daily labor and life. Who is talking? Let me introduce myself. My name is Diego Maldonado. I am a student of animation 3D. In that part, it's about that performance is presented in order to describe different changes, how that technology influence in our daily labor as a worker. Okay, the first one we are going to start with the first PowerPoint slide. It's about different gadgets used in my job. As normal, for example, the majority of the people, in that case, civil citizens, use the cell phone. It's normal, it's common. That cell phone is necessary for different options to develop every day. In that case, for example, how you know, we use the technology in order, for example, to reduce the time and reduce, for example, that effort such as a strong case and also, for example, a knowledge way. Obviously, for example, when you reduce the time, for example, you are learning or occurring different skills. That's skills or those skills is related to the skill, for example, to develop some or representation, PowerPoint slides, performance, right platform, and other aspects. Those options are used especially when you manipulate a cell phone, a smartphone, mobile phone. So this is an instrument that allow to call someone immediately. This is the one of the functions. For example, you can use it, for example, to take the photos and record something, show some kind of evidence, and obvious, for example, and watch series, right? And I remember, for example, when I was a child, uh, I all the time I say, oh, I could like, for example, to have a little or a small TV which I can to move every part and also I can use it. In that case, this is the same synonym as a cell phone. So this is the gadget that we use especially in our job. Constantly, for example, in that tools, we use, for example, different platforms, right, or web page that we decide, for example, to manipulate that kind of technology or digital platforms in order, for example, to preserve, right, and do our life easy. In that case, in order, for example, to demonstrate that some evidence. The first one, for example, in my job, we sometimes implementing Google Forms. One aspect is related, for example, to do a kind of diagnostic. The second is, for example, is about the environment where I'm working. Yes, and also it could be, for example, I could do a kind of survey or focusing about, for example, to describe the rules about the enterprise or some places that we need to be repaired, right? On the other side, for example, I use specifically a smartwatch. Really, at the beginning, I don't like it. Yeah, because for example, there are another I don't know apps inside of that watch. Yeah, at the beginning was so difficult, but throughout the time I use it, I manipulate in a good way, and that moment is necessary for my job. That gadget, for example, implemented, for example, to be attentive to the time, recording, remembering something. If you need, for example, to do any kind of aspect option to take, for example, training, whatever aspect, and also, for example, to send some message by my superiors, right, or boss. And for example, if you need to repair something, so that smart watch show me how much time I spend or how much time I'm spending during that activity, right? As a matter of fact, for example, the use of the computer. You know, for example, that computer was a good tool used daily, especially, for example, for people who need, for example, to say evidence, to use, for example, PowerPoint slide, Microsoft, and Excel, right? Those in order, for example, to have a account, right? And for example, to demonstrate some objects, if those objects are reports, or for example, if we need some tools in order, for example, to develop some kind of actions. This is like this. So in that case, I require a computer and use it in order, for example, to tabulate those activities that I did during the day, right? Could be water the plants, well, for example, the shorts, doors, windows, right? Or visit, for example, the lunch for the workers and others, another kind of responsibilities. The last part is about digital switch. I consider, for example, is used in our enterprise, but it's not, for example, necessary, right? Because when you are responsible, you arrive at time. You never arrive late. Sometimes, for example, external factors, it could be you are sick, right? You have some troubles like this. You would arrive late, right? But as a normal worker, it's not necessary to use a digital switch. We use it, right? To identify the check in and check out. And that's all. Okay. In that case, there are some pictures that I took in order, for example, some action that I did. The first one is about to report the dirt, right? On the other side, for example, you can observe, for example, like this is report in print. I have to follow it, the colors. And the third image is about, for example, some bottles that we are reporting, for example, some photocopies. Right, photocopy now, the machine to take the photocopies. And the fourth image is, for example, a kind of training of, I don't know, is yeah, it's training about, for example, some reflections, action. I mean, for example, the conference about Sura is about, for example, security, uh, illness, right, obtained or develop around the job, right, like this. The fire image is about, for example, at the beginning, when I arrived at times, 6:30, perhaps 6 a.m. This is the weather, and the other side is a collaborative co-worker. He's my friend that he's cutting the plants. In that case, I'm watering the plants and also cleaning, right, in that part. This is, for example, activities that I developed during the day, right? And the second part is about the three gadgets that I use during the academic turns. Academic, no, this during the period. I mean that case. For example, the first one is the smartwatch. Really, for example, that image is about no my watch is normal. Obviously, for example, there are some common apps. The other side, for example, we can find the laptop. In that case, it's about table laptop, but I have, for example, that laptop that I can move on the other places, and also, for example, it used, for example, to save the information, for example, to do accountability about some objects that, for example, have the enterprise, what kind of objects I reports, and also what kind of materials we need, right? For example, we need, for example, to do a kind of list. And the last part is the most important. You know what is this is a cell phone. That cell phone is, for example, is amazing. Why? Because, for example, we you can use, for example, or manipulate and also play in that case, get information, uh, create any kind of designs, and also, for example, record it, save, and transmit any kind of aspects. For example, nowadays this is the fundamental instrument in that worldwide, right? In that case, is that digital work, and I consider, for example, in the future, the most important kind of job would be using the cell phone or technology. As a conclusion, really, for example, I can affirm that my job is great. I like it, right? The routine is normal. It's amazing, right? I know what kind of activity I have to do every day. It's a kind of routine. Sometimes it's disgusting. Why? Because, for example, we need to have break time. In that case, that break time is the weekend. This is the most important. That weekend, for example, is spend the time with my family, friends, to take any kind of short vacation. And what is the purpose in that case? The technology is important. Why? Because this is a kind of revolution, right? I imagine, for example, in 10 years in the future, the majority of people, citizens, civil, for example, will have the kind of labors. It will be in digital way, right? And also, for example, the jobs that we need to use the strong to be strong, right? For example, to use, for example, more the physic muscle. No, it will be reduced. We need, for example, to focus about all about knowledge, mental, and the mind, right? Like this. For that reason, I decided, for example, to select that kind of degree, of course, related to the animation 3D. This is the conclusion. Finally, for example, I have to say that the technology is so important. It's amazing. I like it. The way, for example, to use the platform, the apps. There are a lot of, for example, apps focusing about IA or artificial intelligence. Then also, for example, we need to be competent in that case. So thank you so much. And also, for example, I have to join that kind of video. Goodbye. See you for the next